Once upon a time, I was just a wide-eyed comic book fan, daydreaming about those extraordinary characters leaping off the pages. Little did I know my love for these inked heroes would lead me on an adventure of a lifetime, a journey into selling comic books. It all began during my college years. My dorm room looked more like a secret lair filled to the brim with comic books from every era. As my collection grew, I realized I needed to share this magic with the world. Taking a leap of faith, I set up a small booth at a local comic book convention. The rush of meeting fellow enthusiasts and connecting over shared passions was undescribable. I knew then that I wanted to dive deeper into this world. After years of hard work and perseverance, I finally opened my own comic book store. I curated every inch of this place with love, making it a haven for comic book aficionados of all ages. Each day is an adventure, as people from different walks of life wander through my doors looking for that one special comic that speaks to their soul. Behind the scenes, I spend hours sifting through dusty boxes of old comics, finding hidden treasures and lost classics. Every book has a story, and I'm here to share those stories with my customers, making them a part of this amazing journey. This isn't just a business, it's a passion, it's a way of life. Selling comic books has become my calling, and I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world. To see people's faces light up when they find their favorite issue or discover a new hero is a reward in itself. So, if you ever find yourself wandering the streets, unsure of where to turn, come into my store. Let the magic of comic books take you on a journey you'll never forget. Because in this world of heroes and villains, imagination knows no boundaries, and the stories we tell become the legacy that lives on. Oh, come on, man. Is any part of that not bullshit? What did you want to be when you were a kid? You know what? Scratch that and let me rephrase. What do you want to be doing right now? What's your end game? What makes you happy? Are you fulfilled? Because statistically, only 4 to 10% of this country's population have grown up to follow their childhood dreams. 4 to 10. And I'm not Indiana Jones, so I get lumped into that 90% of the population right along with most of you. Hi. I'm Eric Mowry, host at Out of Context. Please do the like and subscribe thing. And for today's episode, we're talking about, me? Sorry, but we're talking about how I got started in this business, why I am considered by at least 4 people to be an expert on comic history, and why Carnage is the worst character ever. Actually, that last part is just for scandalous flavor text, and there'll be plenty of time to talk about bad characters at a later date. So, who am I? I ask myself that all the time, and the cleanest answer I've ever found is that my name is Eric Mowry. I am a 41-year-old comic seller. I co-own a bookshop. I'm a professional painter, and I love research. I grew up in an area that did not have comic shops. We had corner stores, Unimarts. I'm not sure if they were a national chain or not, but my grandmother worked at one when I was a kid, and that's how I got most of my then current issues. And it's everything that you can probably picture. One lonely spinner rack peppered with only recognizable titles. That carried X-Men, Spider-Man, and What If. I know, I was surprised about the What If too. When I got a bit older, my world opened up a bit, and I realized that there were not only just 8 titles that came out a month, but there were literally decades worth of books to read and collect. There were no apps. There were no readily available trades, no point-and-click shopping. All of it had to be done in person and over the counter. So that's why I became obsessed with this. I loved getting lost in the world of comics, but what I loved more was the thrill of the hunt. To find something at a flea market or a yard sale meant that I was one step closer to having a knowledge that not everyone could possess. The knowledge was also very niche, and it still kind of is if you think about it. Sure, people today know all the main characters because there have been decades worth of movies and cartoon shows, but how many people know who Bloodscream is? Or how many people have read issue 4 of Spider-Man's Tangled Web only to realize that it may be one of the best standalone comics ever written? I would argue not most. So this supervillain style quest for knowledge and the thrill of the literal hunt culminated in my desire for a comic book shop. I teamed up with many different friends, bought many bad deals, and sold a lot of books all over the state of Pennsylvania. As my reach grows, so did my collection. I amassed a fine lot of marvels that would make even the most particular fans squeal in envy. But all I really wanted for my collection, the book that kept me rooting through attics and banging my head off pipes in sub-basements, was the Incredible Hulk 181, the first appearance of Stabby Clawman. But not just any copy of 181. I wanted it to be pristine, so clean that you could eat off of it. And that collection obsession brings me to where I sit today, housed inside a studio that I borrowed from The Chase, housed inside the main facility at Dave & Adams, my employer for almost an entire decade. I have probably seen some of you at comic book conventions, or maybe I was the guy that bought your dad's comic book collection. I have been blessed with the drive and the privilege to be able to call this a career for most of my life, and I'm eternally grateful. But it feels a bit different now, if I'm being honest. Even when I research books for this show, I recognize most of this content is stuff that I picked up over the years. Sure, there's still something new for me, and that's where the research/history part of it really takes center stage, but something is still missing. As of 12:15 p.m. August 7th, 2023, I no longer have a comic book collection. I sold it, all of it, because as the king would say, the thrill is gone. I still visit the crawl spaces of old for other people, but it's been a very long time since I've done it for myself. And I realize that this world of collecting is entirely different from the world that I grew up in, but that's what actually makes it a bit more challenging. For starters, it's no secret that the market dropped a bit. In the biz, we call this the Great Correction, because now comic books will revert back to a healthy level of growth. And I am sure that all of us have strong opinions about but that's not why we're here. Comic books started off as ephemera. That's a cool sounding word, right? Ephemera. And for those of you not familiar with that term, it just means something that is only supposed to be used for a short period of time. A playbill that you would get at a performance or a ticket stub that gets you into a concert could be considered ephemera because they are meant to be discarded after the show ends. Comics would eventually stop being thought of as disposable, but that would happen long after the paper drives of the 1940s. We used to donate our comics to the war effort. And then in the 1950s, comics underwent heavy censorship. As the medium was connecting with new readers and new trends, violent content was prominently displayed on horror and crime books of the day. A rise in juvenile delinquency became erroneously linked to comic books, prompting the second ever televised trial on television and the subsequent destruction of comic books, book burnings, and everything. So in the 1950s, we threw away and destroyed comics. In the 1960s, comics connected more with actual youth and represented not gods, but mortal men who became gods. In the 1970s, comics grew up and added a horror element back into the mix. In the 1980s, we got dark. In the 90s, we got extreme. And in the 90s, we almost sort of killed off the market with hype and speculation. There was a time in your life when you could have built a house out of Mod Podge copies of Superman 75 with a deck made out of spawns and a 2-car garage built from X-Men's. Paper drives, book burnings, and a cannibalized market, all of these trials endured and how. How does a medium with that kind of track record get to stick around? Because of love and obsession, it's plain and simple. It's fun to collect. You know that. It's part of the reason why you're here. We Americans, people, nations, we're hardwired into mementos, physical representations of a time in our lives or a moment that we've only ever heard about. Comics, though, offer not only nostalgia but also history. Want to see Eddie Brock with a mullet? Check out Maximum Carnage. Want to see how comics responded to the war? Go start at the very beginning. The history found in these pages ranges from serious to supplementary. But they are our written record. A portion of it, at least. And if you ask me, there is no better time to study comics than right now. Paper will one day go away. How we consume and how we interact. Our letters are text. Our newspapers are tweets. Comic book paper is going to go away. And if there's just one aging white guy thing I can say to you with confidence, is that the younger generations will never be able to know the pure agony and beauty of having to wait a week or a summer to watch a show and a month between issues of a comic book series. Stories used to be consumed in courses, and I'm sad that it's harder to enjoy that today. So, now, I'm going to rebuild that collection like I built the last one. I'm going to yard sales, flea markets, and eventually collections. But this time, I document it all the way. Folks, my name is Eric Mowry, and this is Out of Context, a show where we'll discuss history as it has been recorded through the comic book medium. From fashion and entertainment to crime and politics, there's so much research to be done for each issue. We'll also be featuring segments related to comic book ads, video games, and music. My set, not this set, my normal set, was cobbled together through bits I found from things lying around the office. My bosses have informed me that if I can prove a channel like this can work, I can have better digs. And that's where you come in. Every piece of my set is upgradable. My desk, my outfit, my segments, correspondence, accommodations, everything. Every single subscriber goes towards credits for upgrading, and the first thing to go is my desk, because if you've watched any of my previous episodes, please go back and watch my previous episodes. You know that my desk is a death trap. Along with all that comic nonsense, I also have tons of stories to tell. So the format for the show will change a little. We'll not only focus on the history of a single comic, but also all of comicdom, including lists, interviews, and a complete timeline of events. I will still take requests, but they can now be as in-depth as particular days in history or as surface level as the list of the worst storylines. So, as we leave here today, I ask all of you two things. One, if you like this content, please subscribe to this channel. And two, write me a question. Actually, write me a real question and really mail it to Out of Context, 55 Oriskany Drive, Tonawanda, New York, 14150. If I select your question, not only will you live in infamy, but you'll also receive a pretty sweet prize package. Take care, and I'll see you next time.